Monorepo versus polyrepo, and why are Octopus Deploy and Argo users so excited? There's a lot happening this week on Argo Unpacked. But before we get into any of our guests, we've got some great ones. And I bring in my co-host. We have, of course, the most anticipated component of Argo Unpacked, and that is so this week's tip is about monorepo versus polyrepo. So a lot of people that use Argo CD love to use a mono repository. That is using a single Git repository with all their manifests in it. Now, I'm not talking about a monorepo with their application code. Of course, we've covered that before. You should always separate your application code and your manifests into separate repositories for like a million reasons. We've covered it before. But should you use one repository to represent all of your infrastructure in one giant monorepo, or should you use multiple repositories so that you can you can split things up and cover these kinds of different things? There are a couple of different considerations for this. One of the most common is permissions. People like to have a permission structure that is separated for different teams. And many people are not familiar with code owners files because they have been a GitHub feature for a long time, but they're also a GitLab feature. This is the ability to set different permissions levels based on folders within a Git repository rather than having wholly different Git repositories for your permissions boundaries. So you can do that absolutely with a monorepo. But there are some issues with using monorepos with Argo CD in general. The biggest one is that when you have tons of activity on a repository, what will happen is an update to one folder will trigger updates across all your applications. So to solve this, we have a feature called manifest generate paths in Argo CD. And what it does is it basically scopes your application to only look for changes in this single folder. But that's not all, because even when there are lots of changes happening, what will happen is even though it's only looking for updates within that folder, because other updates have happened before it can actually pull new files, when the application syncs, it will report that it has synced to a commit that is ahead of the changes that you made to that specific folder. And that just makes it difficult to understand what changed when you just look in Argo CD and you just click on the commit that it's synced to. Now, to solve that, we do have a cool tool called the monorepo controller for Argo CD. It's in Argo Project Labs. And what that does is it basically makes sure those manifests always match out. The other thing is an issue around performance. So if you have a very, very large mono repository that takes a long time to check out, of course, that means that all your applications have to check that out. Now, we do cache that repo, and there is a catch up that happens there, but that can be quite prohibitive if you have very, very large, we're talking about multi-gig repositories. Typically, what we would recommend is that you have repositories set up around your natural boundaries. So if you have an Argo instance or a region or something like that, you might represent that in a single Git repository, and then you could have a logical say, hey, there's a different region or a different set of Argo instances, or there's some other team that manages this. You can do that as well. So there are advantages and disadvantages. The more you split things up, the more difficult it is to do recovery. And so I always think about it this way: what makes it easiest for me to do disaster recovery? If I can go to a single repository and run a single command that rebootstraps everything in that repository, that feels good. But if I need to go beyond what I could logically accomplish with a single command, and maybe with multiple clusters, of course, you might need to run multiple commands. But that's where I'd start to think about, okay, maybe we should break this up and have another repository here. But there are some pretty good efficiencies built in Argo CD to handle it. It does cause potential issues, especially in other tooling as you're making changes to those repos in an automated fashion. And it can be difficult for people to navigate when they become large enough. So those become good reasons to potentially split up a mono repository. So that is your Argo tip of the week. And we're going to do some news about what's going on in the Argo community. And we're going to cover today's topic. But first, let me introduce our guest of the weeks. So I'm going to bring in Bob Walker of Octopus Deploy fame. He is the field CTO for Octopus Deploy, has been huge force in the industry for helping people understand how to do continuous delivery efficiently and effectively. Started as an Octopus Deploy user before becoming the juggernaut in the industry that he is. And of course, my co-host, Ravi Tal, joining us for as long as we're able to. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world. We were mentioning that we all feel like we're tuning in from bunkers because that's what our offices look like, except for Ravi Tal's, which ironically is probably not a bunker. And so she'd have to leave to go to a bunker in the event of too much stuff going on. So anyway, Bob, anything I missed in your intro that you wanted to add?
I don't know if I would call myself a juggernaut.
I would.
I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Bob, you're a tour de force.
Tour de force, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that you started as a Octopus user.
Yes, ma'am.
And then became an employee. Wow.
Yeah, I used Octopus a couple companies, but I saw the benefits of it firsthand because we went from 2-hour manual deployments once a quarter to, by the time I left, our deployments were taking like 15 minutes and we were deploying whenever we wanted. I still remember the very last deployment we did. It was such a non-event that we were actually cracking jokes the vast majority of the time in our Slack. Like, oh, the deployment was finished. Oh, we better go check it. Oh, okay, it's done. All right, see you later, everybody. So that was great.
It's
that's
not
actually
like the nightmare of deploying on Friday and then having to spend the day there, the entire weekend fixing up.
I used to measure the deployments that we would do. I'd listen to music while we were doing it and we didn't have to be like on a phone call or a Zoom call or anything like that. It was just all done over Slack. So I just listened to music and I would use an old-fashioned record player. And so if I had to flip the record, I knew that was bad. If I had to swap out the record, I knew it was really bad.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's actually, I don't know, Ravi Tal, if you knew this, but that's how Kostas got started too, is because he was he was using.
He was writing articles. Yes.
Yeah, he was using CodeFresh
yes.
and he was writing articles about it, and so that's how he came into it.
Comparison. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
So before we jump into the topic of why Argo users are so excited about Octopus Deploy, and Octopus users are excited about Argo and vice versa, any additional comments on the tip of the week that we should cover? Any questions from the, and by the way, as you're watching this live, if you're watching it live, feel free to send us questions as throughout. We'll try to tackle those. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share, tell your coworkers to tune in every week for Argo Unpacked every other week. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
Yeah, the question that one question that I had, because you talked a little bit about performance, was, are you ever concerned about having so many different Argo applications? Let's say you have 10,000 Argo applications, smashing against that same Git repository. Is there any sort of performance concerns? Like, do you ever end up in a situation where you rate limit yourself against GitHub or GitLab or something?
That is one that we didn't talk about, is that you can definitely run out of API calls on GitHub. And I think that GitHub actually does do some API scoping based on repository. So that does happen sometimes. We do have metrics provided that you can get into Grafana or Prometheus to actually look at your Git requests and your queue depth, so you can measure those. That is actually a very common thing that we run into with Argo supports, because some of our customers will hit us up and they'll be like, "Oh no, suddenly stuff has stopped syncing," and it's because they've run out of API requests. So that can happen. Usually, more often, they're hitting it at the account level rather than the repository level, but that can be an issue. For Argo itself, it does, of course, cache the repository and the applications, and those can get very large. And so you might just not want to have, I mean, if you've got, a 50 gig repository or something, 5 gig repository, if you got a bunch of those hanging out on your repo server, it's going to be taking up a lot of memory. And depending on how frequently you're updating, you may not need that. It's especially a problem if you have stuff unrelated to manifests in your repository. Because if you had 5 gigs of manifests, they're going to be 5 gigs if they're in 5 repos or if they're in 1 repo. I mean, you're just gonna have to deal with that memory anyway. But sometimes we do have people who will be like, "Oh, in my Git history, in this repository, at one point we stored a whole bunch of binaries."
Yeah.
So you're checking out like this Git history that has like gigs and gigs of binaries, which you're never going to use. We do have a new feature as of 3.3 that is shallow clone. So you can specify that you don't get the history. That's very good, especially for repositories that are very busy. So that one can be an efficient way to get better performance. We do not have sparse checkout yet in Argo CD. I have committed to doing it like 5 times starting about 18 months ago and have not completed it. We had a user contribute an AI-based pull request to add it in, and I was hoping that one we could get off the line, but I think they ghosted after we made too many comments. They were like, "Oh, I don't want to be between you. I don't want to be between the maintainers and the AI tool I'm using to make this." So yeah, that's those. I don't know if that. What was your question again?
No, that answered it. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point when you talk. It's not necessarily just about all the manifest files. We were talking to one customer in particular. I think they mentioned they had videos in that Git repository.
Videos.
Yeah, that's what we were like, videos. That was exactly what we questioned as well. It's like, did I read the call log correctly? Did I hear that correctly? So yeah, if you have all these large binaries attached to all of these other items, yeah, that could absolutely substantially increase the amount of data you're pulling down.
And you're just dumping gigs of videos into memory for no purpose. Now, I shouldn't say no purpose. Maybe your workflow is we record a video of our CEO saying what he wants. We check that into Git. Then we have an automated process that scans the video and dumps it into an LLM and then renders manifests based on that. Technically, you could do that whole thing using a config management plugin in Argo CD. It would be one of the worst ideas I've ever heard, but you know what? It might be worth doing it for the content. Maybe we should make that.
I think it would be held together with baling twine and dreams.
Yeah. Is there what about, I mean, from an organizational perspective, do you see challenges, Bob, of people doing particularly large monorepos? I mean, maybe not from the technology side even, but just from like the human side?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when we were, because I remember we've been talking to a couple customers about it. I'm just thinking about the Rube Goldberg-esque type of pull request workflow approval process around this. Do you need to require more or greater types of approvals when you're going to, say, production versus when you're going to dev? Do you have to worry about that? How is that going to work? Anything else that comes to mind, especially when we start talking about having hundreds upon hundreds of clusters. I'm also thinking about if you're deploying to, say, edge locations, so the mechanical restaurant model. I want to deploy a Kubernetes cluster, each one of those, dealing with all that. How do you handle that? Who has permissions? Do you have different release managers that can deploy to, say, this group of stores versus this group of stores? How is that going to work out? How do you organize it? How do you understand all of that? So it can get I think it can get very messy pretty quick.
I could see, especially if you had to make a code owners file that had thousands of entries, that would feel rough. Like, I think if you can't do your code owners with less than like 100 people, then I would think, okay, it's probably time to separate this out.
Yeah, I liked how you said having some logical boundaries around there, because I mean, obviously the answer isn't in my mind, I don't think an answer is a single repo, but I also don't think it's perhaps a repo per application. That seems a bit too much. There's definitely a healthy medium where you can get to where you reach the goals of what you're trying to accomplish of, in your particular case, disaster recovery, which I thought was a good idea, versus having this anything goes type of world.
Ravital, we need a button for the show that just says "It depends." So there's the audio cue. I just recorded it, so I don't have to do it later. Just recorded it, and we just hit that button, and then every time we talk about something, we just hit that button. It depends, because it really is like, I mean, Google famously uses a mono repository, but they have spent literally $40-50 million to develop tooling around enabling the largest mono repository ever. And it's very cool and it's very convenient for the developers who work there, but it is not an easily exportable technology to the rest of the planet. And the things to support that are quite complex. I mean, it's more than just sparse checkout, because they do kind of on-demand streaming of like dependencies and stuff. I mean, it's pretty wild. So yeah, I mean, if you're Google, you should probably do mono repository, but if you're not,
I always come back. I do always come back to that, because you definitely will talk to customers that have read, or potential customers that have read these various articles where I read that Google does this, or I read that Spotify does this, or I read that Adobe does this. But to your point, they've invested tens upon tens of millions of dollars into the tooling, into the workflow, to building out all of this custom tooling that I don't think you can export to another company. Not only that, but every company has different types of policies and requirements and regulations they have to go through, that I'm willing to bet that some companies, such as Spotify, they may or may not have to go through.
Every Argo anti-pattern is like a default. It's like a thing, or the patterns that we suggest, they're defaults that, hey, this is the default best way to do something. But it doesn't mean that there might not be a scenario where it makes sense for you to break the rules because the way your requirements demand it. So I don't think it's out of bounds to think of that. We're going to talk about Argo why Argo users are so excited about Octopus. Before we do that, I thought maybe we should cover a little bit of Argo news. And so for people that don't know, Argo CD 3.4 is getting very close. We're currently on the 4th release candidate. Came out about 2 weeks ago. So I suspect this is going to be coming. I think it's scheduled to drop this week, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look at the release schedule. But Argo CD 3.4 is coming. We did cover it, I think, in a previous episode. What's coming there? Of course, the blog post is available, so check that out before it comes out.
As well as some videos by Reggie.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We have Reggie did a great video talking about what's new in 3.4. So definitely watch that. Ruby Tal's putting it up on the screen now, and we'll throw it in the show notes and description and stuff, so you can watch it. Another thing that came up is the Argo CD survey, end user survey. So we do these periodically. We actually didn't do one last year, but this is one of the best ways for us to get information about how the project is doing and collect your feedback. So we'll throw this link into the chat and again in the description. Go fill out that survey, make your voice heard. That's super important. One other piece of news is Argo security. So we've talked in previous episodes about the Trivy hack, and this is continuing an ongoing software supply chain attack. Since going into Trivy, it has spread to many other repositories, lots of node modules. We've seen it in a couple of other security tools that have come out. So this has been an interesting one for us in the Argo project because it's very much targeting the open source ecosystem. And a lot of projects that we're very familiar with. I know some of the maintainers on these different projects. So we had a confab within the Argo maintainers to talk about this, and we went through and reviewed all of the Argo repositories. We looked at the CI pipelines. We looked for any potential issues with, first of all, are we set up in such a way that if people open pull requests, they could ever gain access to secrets? Any problematic potential injection vectors there, which is how Trivy got hacked in the first place. And then the next was, okay, within our supply chain, have we properly version pinned everything so that even if they pushed to a previous tag and overwrote that tag, are we pulling from the SHAs and making sure that you couldn't trick us that way? So we've done this whole review, and I wanted to share, we did have this pull request. So for people that are just listening to the audio, I pulled up a pull request on the Argo Helm Git repository, and it is set to update chart versions and test logic. Now, if we look at the change adds a exploit.yaml. Now, if you're a keen-eyed pull request reviewer, things that are named exploit will make your antenna go up, because you usually don't have stuff in your software named exploit, but they have in the Argo CD template, they have an exploit.yaml that's set to run as part of a pre-install Helm hook, and it starts a container named exploit that goes and downloads a binary from an arbitrary website. Now, I think that this was actually made by some influencer as a joke. I think he might have done it on stream or something, but we had a really funny conversation among the Helm maintainers. He said, I think it was shared with me with the phrase, "There was an attempt," because yeah, this is not the kind of pull request you merge. Now, if it had not been named exploit pod, I think we still would have been pretty suspicious about adding a pre-install Helm hook that downloads a random binary. That's not something that you want to merge typically. But we did have some people try to trigger updating to newer versions of binaries that would potentially be compromised. So we've got to be super vigilant about this, because Argo CD is pretty critical infrastructure. That's fun stuff, huh?
Yes, it bums me out that they went after Trivy, because I mean that's I've been using them for quite a while. Just scan for any vulnerabilities. Yeah. Scan
and it's open source and it's free.
Yeah, it's great.
Like they're literally giving it away to the community. That's nice. But yeah, no good deed goes unpunished in the open source world, unfortunately. We are going to tackle Argo questions, and we're going to take one from the community at the end of the show. But I think it's time now, Bob, for us to get into why are. Oh, what are you going to say, Ravitel?
I have one tiny additional update that I forgot to mention. Speaking of Octopus Deploy, so Octopus Deploy distributed 10 badges for the Argo CD top 10 contributors for the first quarter of 2026.
Yeah, this is a cool program that you're doing, Ravitel, to recognize the top contributors of Argo. And you're issuing Credly badges every quarter now to the top 10 contributors of these projects.
Yes.
So you can earn that badge. So the competition is on. A lot of people have gotten those badges. 10 people have gotten those badges so far. And of course, we're now into a new quarter. So who's going to get it for Q2?
And I think we should definitely call out those 10 contributors. So next quarter, we will do it. We will definitely do that in one of the shows.
Excellent. Awesome.
Now, what if I'm not the world's most foremost Argo expert? Can I still contribute to Argo?
You sure can. First of all, documentation. A lot of people open up pull requests because they find grammatical errors or spelling errors or things like that. That's quite helpful. So even if you didn't know anything about Argo, you can probably help correct on documentation.
And this is actually me. This is how I got started, and I'm still in that stage of contributing to the Argo CD documentations. And I've started with the Getting Started guide, and then I realized that there are some images that are not synced, and there are some small stuff that you can actually start and update and contribute, which is fantastic.
And I would also make the argument like the Getting Started guide is a really good place to start, especially if you're a person that doesn't understand Argo. So if you're reading the Getting Started guide and if something's not clear,
yes,
iterate on that, improve upon that, because
exactly.
Because I'm guarantee other people have the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. True. Absolutely. And we also, even if you're like a marketing person, if you want to help with ArgoCon, we would love your help. We do a lot of work to organize these conferences, and we love when people volunteer for those things. So there's a SIG marketing, there's a SIG security, but SIG marketing is probably the one that if you're not technical at all, that would be a good one to volunteer for and come help out. And yeah, the #1 maintainer for last quarter was Reggie Voloshin from Team Octopus Deploy. Love to see it. Octopus Deploy has been the #1 maintainer for quite some time. So we love to see that. So Ravitel, I guess we could mention ArgoCon, KubeCon coming up. KubeCon India, which I think is in May. And then we've got ArgoCon Japan coming up July 28th, I want to say. So lots of opportunities. That CFP did just close, but CFPs for North America are still open. So go submit those talks. All right, Bob.
And you'll be at Salt Lake City, right? I hope so.
Of course. I'm always at Salt Lake City.
Yeah. November. Yeah.
I'm trying to go to Japan, but
the
airline fuel price situation has caused an issue where I'm trying to move my flights so I can make it to Japan because I'm going to be flying somewhere else already. But the cost to move my flights is now $7,000. Even 4 days. I just need 4 days. And it's like, guys, I already have a seat. It's for me and my family. And I'm like, we already have seats. Will you just let me move this for not $7,000? And if you do, I will buy tickets and use your airline more. I'll go to Japan. I'll do it. But if they won't let me move I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. All right. So let's go, Bob.
Yes.
Why are Argo users getting so excited about Octopus Deploy?
It's funny. I look at it like, why do people get excited when you combine chocolate and peanut butter together? It just goes together so great.
I love that.
Yeah, that's the way I kind of think about it, because the Argo CD by itself is a fantastic tool. It's a fantastic program, and I love it. At the same time, I think there's some additional things that could go with it, and this is where Octopus Deploy can be very beneficial, specifically around things such as environments, being able to define environments, saying this application or this set of applications. This is for test. This is for dev. This is for staging, however you want to define it. And these are for production. Same thing with clusters, being able to go across all of those other different clusters. But then on top of that, being able to promote a release and a version through those different applications all the way up to production. And I know, Dan, we've talked about this before. It's it's really getting into this deployment control plane idea of being able to communicate to all of these different clusters, be it you have 4 different clusters just because you're in a hyperscaler, or you have 4,000 different clusters because you're deploying to edge locations. Having that capability is so critical.
Yeah. This is oh, go ahead, Rivital.
I just, as usual, I want to take you maybe one step backward.
Oh, yeah.
What's the core differences between Argo CD and Octopus Deploy for the sake of the listeners?
Yeah. I'll use an analogy if you don't mind. And I think hopefully it helps out. Those. Yes. The way in my mind, the way I picture it is that Argo CD is a very powerful engine for a car, but you still need the rest of the car. You still need seats, the steering wheel, the wheels, and a body. And so what Octopus Deploy is providing is it's providing the body for the engine that is Argo CD. And so we're not looking to replace Argo CD. What we're looking to do is we look to augment what Argo CD can do. And so we are the thing that will help facilitate the updates to your Git repository, as an example. So we can say, we want to update this, this SHA as an example, in my customized overlay for this particular application, and we'll handle that for you. Really kind of solves the question, which is, how do I update my files inside of Git? Who is responsible for this? We provide all of that. We automate all of that. And so it eliminates a lot of the unnecessary confusion at times.
Yeah, I think it's like Argo CD is for sync. It solves it brilliantly. Really good. You can do diffing, of application source versus what's live. That's really valuable. You can customize that diffing, all kinds of policy around how sync is applied, which is great. But the question is, okay, now I have 2 applications. One is for dev, one's for prod. I want to make a change in dev and then have an automated process where it moves to prod. How do I do that? That's Octopus Deploy, right? Yeah. So in application promotion, environment promotion, you mentioned this control plane idea. I might have many clusters, and Argo CD can connect to many clusters, but I should logically almost always have multiple Argo instances. Just from a pure blast radius management standpoint, we've had a lot of cases of users who they upgrade Argo CD, or they make a change to an application set, or they make some other configuration change and they accidentally blow up part of their infrastructure because they've put everything into a single Argo instance. So you want to have, a staging or a test instance of Argo. Typically, you'd usually want to have different Argo instances for different regions. Maybe you have network boundaries. It's nice to have a different Argo instance. But running lots of Argo instances is annoying for users because then they have to go to different places. Octopus Deploy, you view everything from a single control plane. You can see all your applications in all these different locations. It's set up for that kind of scale. It also solves that issue of how do I keep my Argo instances up to date? Because I can use Octopus Deploy, put all my Argo instances into a project. I can update staging, then dev, then region 1, region 2, region 3, etc. I can have manual approvals. I can do all that kind of stuff. Like Argo CD sometimes gets abused to try to do the rest of CD, but it really, there was a joke that we made that maybe we should have renamed Argo CD to like Argo Sync, because it doesn't do all of CD. We're always having arguments about terms in the software world.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, what is CD? What does continuous delivery really mean? We still have people that are thinking that CI, continuous integration, is the same thing as continuous delivery. And it's like, well, we say CI/CD a lot, but clearly these are distinct use cases. Should the same thing that is building a binary have access to production? Probably not. You probably want to have those quality gates. There's different things you're solving.
I also think about all of the steps oftentimes you want to run before you get to the point where I'm ready to make that Git update. So you want to get ITSM approval. Maybe I want to deploy a database. Maybe I want to, if we go back to Trivy, I want to verify my supply chain. So that's something that you should probably do also inside, as part of your deployment process. I recently wrote a template inside of Octopus that will also verify your dependencies, that will go out and say, okay, is everyone on the appropriate version before I make my update? And so it's all of these steps you want to run before. And then it's also going to be all the steps you want to run after. It's not just the verification. There might be some day 2 operations that might not occur as part of that deployment. It might be something where I need to get some logs, or I need to your point of, I want to upgrade my Argo instance to the latest version. How do I handle something like that in an automated fashion, especially if you have dozens upon dozens of Argo CD instances? Not having that in an easy to do place is really difficult. Collating all of the logs you get from Argo CD, because I love the visualization that it provides. I love all the information that it provides, because it could tell me my application's in sync, it's healthy, everything is looking good. But I'd have to go to each individual instance. And that's always incredibly frustrating. And I hate having to jump between all these different instances. I mean, I only have 2 that I have to worry about, and that's too many. I just want to go to one place and have it handle all that for me. And so that being able to collate all that.
Especially with edge clusters, I quite like the pattern of standalone Argo instances on each edge cluster, because they have this kind of networking isn't always reliable. You want it to be a self-contained thing that you can, like, the way that Chick-fil-A would do it is, if a node went bad, I asked him one time, I was like, what do you do if a node goes bad and you need to like go and debug it? Do you send somebody out? And they said, no, we just ship a new computer and they just plug it in. We don't want anybody on the site having to do anything other than like set this thing on the shelf, right? And if you're using Argo CD kind of standalone in these edge clusters, you can do that. The only reason why you might not is you have super resource constraints on it, and maybe then it's worth setting up the Argo CD agent, which uses a network tunnel to connect these things. But in general, having it be standalone is really nice. And then you just have the Octopus Deploy agent, the Argo CD gateway is what it's called, installed on it, and then you can do everything from there, which is really cool. I wanted to ask you, Bob, because this is part of Octopus Deploy that I know less about, the policy enforcement aspect of this. Because I can have all my Argo instances connected to my Octopus Deploy. I can do my app promotion. I can set up my CD pipelines. It'll make commits. It'll wait for the applications to become healthy in Argo CD. That's all great. What does the policy layer add, and what are the capabilities of that within Octopus Deploy?
Yeah, so the policy layer, that's part of our Platform Hub feature. That's what we umbrellaed it all under. And so within Platform Hub, there's 2 key components. There's the templating capabilities. So I want to be able to standardize as an example of how I deploy to Argo CD. And then you're going to have the policies as well. And what policies provide is just kind of that guarantee that, yes, I'm in fact using the standards that people have set for me. So I am using the template that you set for me. But you can also extend that out quite a bit, where you can guarantee certain things like this particular Docker container, for example, or this particular package of SQL Server migration scripts that came from my main branch, because I'm going to the production. So I have these rules that I might set up that I want to be able to enforce, where if I'm going to these ephemeral environments, I want to have pre-release. But when I'm going up to, say, production, that I want to make sure that everything's coming in from main. So kind of that type of thing where you can force not just that am I actually running this step, is the step not skipped, is it enabled, but it's also where, in fact, are my artifacts, my build artifacts, where are they coming from as well, and enforcing that. And what's nice about it is that we can do a couple of things where we can prevent the deployment from running whatsoever, or we can warn and give people a chance to say, hey, you are not compliant. So let's go back to, for example, verifying the supply chain. You would have that be a template inside of Octopus Deploy that would verify and handle all of that extra work. That would be a template, and then you would have a policy that would ensure that, yes, that template is in fact being ran. But not everyone might have that template, so you give everyone maybe 90 days as an example. I'm going to give you 90 days to get compliant, and then after those 90 days, I'm going to switch it from a warn to a block, and I'm going to start blocking your deployments to kind of give them that chance. And then once I told you exactly what was going to happen when you made the decision not to follow my advice, and now your deployments are blocked, and I don't know what to tell you now. Like, you didn't listen to me.
This is by the way part of what I really love about the platform hub. Argo CD doesn't have a concept of environments. We have clusters, we have projects, but there's not a way for me to say, oh, this is prod. Prod gets treated differently than staging, or Europe has different regulatory requirements that need to be met, or China has different regulatory requirements, whatever it is. But Octopus does, and I can actually define environments that include Argo instances, clusters, applications, and then Platform Hub lets me set policies around how those environments are treated, right?
It's really, it's in terms of scoping. When it comes to the policies itself, you scope policies to different environments. I'll go back to I want to deploy a build artifact. I want to say it has to not, I can't come from anything but main. It can't have a pre-release tag. So that would be a policy, but I only want to apply that when I'm going to say test in production. But if I'm going to dev, don't care. That's not a problem of mine. And so you can treat them differently that way, based on the scoping that you add into the policy itself. So the policy actually has two parts to it. It has a scope as to where does this policy get applied, who applies. So production would be a really good example. Staging. Another good one would be, say, what applications. So if it's maybe part of the Kubernetes project group, because we only care about applying these policies for that. And then the second part of it is going to be the actual policy itself, where it's going to say, I require this particular template to be always used when I'm deploying to Kubernetes, as an example.
That templating aspect is also just awesome from an end user standpoint too, because I just have a turnkey way of moving forward. The other thing that I think doesn't get the attention, but as an Argo user, I was quite excited about coming into Octopus Deploy, were runbooks. Because I think, we think of CD as being things that are, it's like, kind of like CI, right? But it's CI with like context and these policies. And of course, it's more than that. But runbooks are really cool operational tools. And how do you like to explain runbooks to people?
Unfortunately, it's not a Kubernetes example, but it's an example that I lived myself. Because as we said at the start of this, I was an Octopus Deploy user prior to becoming an Octopus Deploy employee. So runbooks are day two operations. That's really the goal behind it. And the canonical example is always going to be create and destroy your infrastructure. That's a really good point. But there's also the other aspect of running an application in production. So my example, the one that I lived quite frequently, is I worked on an application that was defunded. It was keep the lights on only. That's literally all we would do. It'd have maybe 5 hours of work total. But this application, about once a quarter, would get a memory leak, and it would just start consuming all of the memory on the server. The only way to solve it was to restart it. We didn't have enough funding to fix it, but it was just got to go restart it as a once a quarter, maybe once a half type of thing. So I'd have to walk over to our operations people, ask them to restart the service, tell them what server they needed to jump onto. So they had a remote into the server. Then they had to find the appropriate service, and sometimes they restarted the wrong service, and I had to physically watch them do the work. With runbooks, all of that is automated. That entire process is automated. So I get limited production access to do a very specific task. Now, if you bring it back to Kubernetes, a good example would be, maybe I just want to restart a pod. Maybe something's just not quite right, and the best way to do it in the fastest, low friction way is I just want to restart the dang thing, get back up and running. So that'd be a really good example. Before we had Kubernetes live object status, or the ability to pull the logs from Argo itself, a really good example also was, I want to run kubectl to get those logs, get the pod logs, get the events. And so what this really helps you out is you don't have to give developers kubectl access to be able to debug their applications or to perform just simple recovery aspects. You can also give it to maybe your frontline support people. Hey, if this particular thing happens, it's really weird, but if it does, here's a runbook you can run. It's limited, controlled production access, and that's what I love about it.
It's got scope, and the policies apply to it. And so if it's interacting with specific environments, it gets different permission set. My favorite use case for runbooks with Argo is very common thing that happens with Argo CD is it'll get locked up for some reason.
Yeah.
And you don't know why. So have a run book that installs a sync window that blocks synchronization. Suddenly everything calms down and you can look at your diffs and see what's causing the issue. You resolve your diffs and then you can have a run book that puts it back into normal operation. And that's like making a sync window isn't hard, but you need kubectl API access to do it, or you need Argo CD CLI access to do it. But if you have it wrapped in the permission structure of something like Octopus Deploy inside a runbook, policies are being applied. That's awesome. That makes it really easy. It's turnkey for me. And I can embed runbooks into my CD pipelines, so I can reuse them if I need to, and as part of an automated process. And this is where, Bob, I think the real secret sauce for what's going to get people is going to melt everybody's faces this year. Okay.
Yeah.
Octopus Deploy has context. It knows every deployment, every environment, every target, the logs, the status of the applications. It has a full history of every change that's been made. It can pull all of that context together. It has permission structure through Platform Hub, where I can set policies for different environments. I can set rules. I have templates. I have all this stuff. One of the patterns we're seeing, and I'm sure you're not, I didn't tell you beforehand I was going to talk.
Yeah, I've been kind of curious where you're heading with this.
I think you'll immediately know what I'm talking about. One of the patterns we've been seeing from Octopus Deploy users is embedding AI agents into runbooks, but they're subject to the policy engine, and they have access to the context that Octopus Deploy provides. And so suddenly you have this amazing place to run operations tasks or to do CD tasks where you have agents that are able to access the specific context. But the key really, because when you have an agent, you're like, oh, I'm going to give it root access, let it run wild and do everything it wants to do. AWS saw how that goes a couple of weeks ago when it ripped down production because it was like, the fastest way to fix this is just to tear down production. You have to have these guardrails in place, because otherwise, just like with people, you wouldn't give root access to a new employee of all your systems, right? You wouldn't do it. So you wouldn't do it for agentic AI. But if you have a really cool permission structure policy engine and you got the context, well, that enables agentic employees as well as agentic AI. I think that's going to be amazing. I don't know if you're seeing that from too many people yet, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some of that. Yeah, I'd almost invert that slightly. And so having the agentic AI make the calls out to, say, Octopus Deploy runbooks. Oh, I'm seeing this particular problem happen.
Oh, yeah.
So like, let's go back to AWS as an example. I'm seeing this particular problem happen. I know this is the right solution. I'm just going to invoke this Octopus Deploy runbook. Now, to your point, the runbook, it has limited access as to who can do what, when, where, and why. It can't make changes it's not authorized to because it's a deterministic process. Yeah. The AI agent can't invoke it unless it has the appropriate permission. And so you're limiting the scope as to what it can and can't do. But this is no different in my mind than, say, having a person do the exact same thing. I saw this error message come through. I know this is the best solution. Therefore, I'm going to run this particular runbook. And now you can just have your AI agents invoke this as well. But also, to your other point is, yes, you can absolutely have an AI agent invoke it. Have a runbook invoke an AI agent, but I would be also very cautious because it's always, you're never quite sure once the AI agent is let loose as to what it can and can't do. You don't want to give it, say, root permission. So that's why I almost want to have the AI agent invoke the deployment, invoke the Octopus Deploy runbook.
Well, and I can load those runbooks from an MCP, from the Octopus MCP server. I can use the API. I can use the CLI to get these things. And so you are in a position where the AI agent, wherever it's running, you can enable it to trigger these responses and run these runbooks. And that runbook could be, running an agent or calling other agents too. It could do, all that kind of stuff. And then that permissions part is really critical, that you have it subject to that structure. Now, we have seen agents doing breakout behavior. This is something that not an Octopus in general, but
no, but we saw that with Mythos.
General.
Yeah, we saw the new Mythos cloud code where the AI agent got it broke itself out that way.
Yes. Yeah. And I do have, I've got a little bit of maybe water to splash on the Mythos. I haven't used it yet, so I don't have any special
Obviously,
knowledge.
I don't think anyone outside those 40 companies is using it now.
The CNCF did say that they have a partnership with Claude and they're going to give access to maintainers, and so I'm waiting for them to give us access for Argo so we can check it out. But I think that people were sharing like, hey, it identified all these vulnerabilities really quickly, and it was like, okay, that's really interesting. I actually get vulnerability reports for the Argo project all the time.
Yeah.
And many of the ones that we've gotten over the last year have been generated by AI and are complete crap. So it's true that they're generating CVEs. They're just not actually valid half the time already. Those are not Mythos ones. Now, maybe if you throw Mythos at it, it's going to be much better at not giving these false positives. But a lot of the security reports that I'm getting are like, if a user has admin access and they're logged into Argo CD, they can create additional admin users. And you're like, yes, that's what it's
we hope
supposed
so.
to do. They're like, but that could be a vulnerability if those new admin users are bad actors. And you're like, yeah, okay, yes.
It can also be
turns on when I turn the key.
Yeah,
that's just how it's supposed to work, guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's preventing that original admin user from causing hack? I mean, that original admin user, if they're an admin user, they can cause havoc as well. I think it honestly comes back to what you said at the very beginning, which is if you give AI agents root permission, if you're not treating it appropriately, it's going to do whatever it wants to do. You can't, it's no different than, say, telling your 15-year-old not to drive fast. It's like, that's going to be the first thing that's going to enter their brains. Like, I should really drive fast. I can't help myself from doing this. Or a 16-year-old, depending on the state that you live in or the country that you live in. And so, yeah, I wouldn't trust an intern with production, with root access and production. Why would I give, or a brand new person with root access and production? Why would I give an AI agent root access and production? That just seems bananas. That's why you need, that's why you need to have like this kind of control plane around it, where it's like you have your AI agents invoking the very specific things. And also it can contribute back to Octopus Deploy as well. It can offer suggestions. I'm sure you can have AI agents offer suggestions. Hey, this would be an improvement on your Argo CD. Maybe instead of having app of apps, maybe an application set might be a better use case for this particular example.
And I like that I can use run books on cron. Like I can schedule them too, because I can, this is the whole thing that makes OpenClaw interesting, is that I essentially have an agent on a schedule to check and update things. I've been doing this with Symposium for Kubernetes, but I can do this with Octopus too. I can have an agent that runs and says, hey, go review what's going on, look at recent deployments, see if there's any potential issues, give it read-only access. So you're not worried about it blowing stuff up. And then maybe you hook in Slack to that run book so it can send a message to you in Slack and let you know what's going on. I mean, lots of cool possibilities. We're seeing this from some Octopus users building this stuff, and really excited to see more of that coming out. So lots to be excited about as Argo users in Octopus. But unfortunately, Bob, all this stuff costs $1 billion, right? So I can't even use it, right?
No, you can use Octopus Deploy right now. Now, you can't get access to the policies and Platform Hub. That's an enterprise-only feature, but all of the other stuff, all of the Argo integration with Octopus Deploy, all of that's free. That's part of you can get that as part of the free license. You can be part of the professional license, which is paid, or it's also the enterprise license. So you get it in all three.
I'm actually currently using the free license for my home lab, so we're in business here, so we're good.
Well, I use my staff instance, because everyone who works at Octopus, you can get a free enterprise license, Dan. You don't have to use the free license.
But I wanted to know, I wanted to make sure I knew what the free experience was.
But no, I mean, you can get a free. No, I actually use it myself there's certain tasks that I want to run through Octopus. Specifically for runbooks on my home lab. Backing up is a really good use case. Actually, I have a backing up my Kubernetes cluster host. That whole thing, I have that backing up to my NAS periodically.
Oh yeah, nice. So smart. Okay. So we're in the last couple of minutes of the show. Thanks for covering this topic with us, Bob. We wanted to take some community questions and community issues. So feel free in the comments to raise any questions you have. We'll tackle those. This is the first one that I wanted to share is coming from the Argo community. And let me throw it in here. So this is a question from the Argo CD subreddit. Oh, not this one. We already looked at that one. We did that one last week. This quick one. This one was labeled as a quick helm question. It said, quick helm question. Hello. Is there a best practice for third-party configuration charts regarding whether or not they should have their own values files? For instance, let's say I want to deploy my application using Argo CD, and I'm using the Elastic Stack to store and query my logs. Will it be best to configure FileBeat and Logstash in my base values.yaml, or should I create a separate elastic prod elastic test values file? Now, I have such a strong opinion about this that it could be its own episode. But to put it in brief, I don't think you should ever deploy a third-party Helm chart using Argo CD directly, ever. I think you should always create an umbrella chart that references the third-party Helm chart as a dependency. Always. Just as a default behavior. And then once you've created that umbrella chart, you can then have your values file there that will set whatever specific overrides on that it will do. Now, there's a couple of anti-patterns I'm trying to target with this. The first one is that almost everybody, when they consume a third-party Helm chart, they take the values file and they copy it into their repository. Folks, what if there's a new version of the Helm chart and it has a new default value in that values file? And what if that value is fixing a security issue? What do? You go and manually copy that specific value because you look so closely at every software update you get, every update to a Helm chart. You go and copy that value manually into your values file. This is a totally broken way. The entire Helm ecosystem is broken off of this, off of people just copying the values file, and it creates this issue. And of course, the other issue is that you have to use multi-source values. That you have to use multi-source application at Argo CD. And if you can avoid using multi-source apps, I think it's always best. Now, is it annoying to create an umbrella chart? I guess it's like a 1-second task for AI. It's a 10-second task for a human. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, you should be creating separate values files. And then for your environments, you can layer in the different values that you want to have. And layering your values files is definitely the recommendation that I would give. Anything you would add, Bob, to that?
The only question I would ask would be, what if you need to install Argo CD with using the Helm chart? So it's like chicken and egg type of scenario.
No, same thing, actually. Honestly, if you're using the Helm chart, very common pattern, you install Argo CD, you use the Helm chart, fine, no problem. The next thing you do is you create an application pointing at an umbrella chart that includes the Argo CD Helm chart, and you point it at the cluster that you've deployed Argo CD to. It'll do a sync and it will take over the management of all those resources. You won't do another Helm release, right? Because Argo CD doesn't do Helm releases, but it will, you can then version your Helm chart, your dependencies, all that stuff, just like you normally would. I think that's the better pattern. And it's not very common. Most people don't create umbrella charts for every third-party app. And I think it is the right thing to do. I think it really is much better.
Honestly, I mean, you could also, this would also be a really good use case for, say, an Octopus runbook as well. Because you could have the runbook. I mean, that's what I mean. Honestly, this is how, so step back. We just got back from KubeCon Amsterdam a little bit ago. There were a few times where the internet decided not to behave itself. Not as nearly as bad as Atlanta, but it decided not to behave itself. And I was running everything locally. on a VM. And the way that I installed everything locally on my VM was I used a Helm chart, the Argo CD Helm chart inside of Octopus, and then ran that. And then after that, I had additional steps that would then configure Argo CD to kind of bootstrap. And then I had everything else running off Argo CD. So again, you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, perfect. I do like the idea of using runbooks to bootstrap this kind of thing and make the commit to the repo for you, and just have it be structured. And yeah, that's slick. Awesome. Well, I think that was the main question that we wanted to tackle for this week's segment on value on whatever community questions. So Rovital, what do the people need to know?
They need to know that they can subscribe here.
ArgoUnpacked.com.
It has all of the upcoming episodes, all of the previous episodes, the video of the month, I would say, the tip of the week. Everything is here. They can follow us on LinkedIn, on X, on Blue Sky. They can directly go to our YouTube, where I think we have definitely more than 7K subscribers. I'm wondering if we're up to 8K subscribers. A lot of good content. So stay tuned, follow us, subscribe, like us.
We're at 7,910 folks.
So close.
We need your help. We need 90
So
more
close.
users. Come on. Send this to your friends, send this to your coworkers, send it to your boss. Maybe he'll have some more empathy. He or she will have some more empathy for you about what you're doing.
We're in it for the subs and the likes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our next episode is in 2 weeks, and it's Dr. Argo called "Do Your Custom Resources Need a Checkout?" This is a very cool thumbnail on this one, by the way, Rovital. Great job. Bob, you got anything you need to pitch or plug?
I would say keep an eye on the newer functionality that we're going to be adding for Octopus Deploy and Argo. We have something already. It's fantastic, but I'm really excited for what's going to be coming in Q2, because I saw the plan. It's really going to be, so keep an eye out for the announcement blog posts, and keep an eye out for the new functionality that's being added.
We got a lot of hot stuff cooking up here. Oh, you know what we didn't mention is that all of this works really well with AWS hosted Argo.
That was what I was just thinking about, actually. Yeah.
Totally forgot to mention it. But a lot of people that are adopting the Argo capability of AWS, of EKS, are finding themselves running lots and lots of Argo instances. And Octopus Deploy it fully supports it. You can connect it in. You can deploy to it, manage your promotions, manage that whole infrastructure, all that stuff from a single place. That's pretty badass. So great use case. So try it out if you're an EKS user. All right. Well, with that, everybody, thanks for joining this episode of Argo Unpacked. And as always,
thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Rovital. Everybody,
Thank you, Dan.
stay synced.